What's up, creative minds? I am Sir Angel and this is your Foodie Chef. The question I get asked most is how to get sharp images, how to get better images, but specifically targeted to sharp images. I hear photographers talking about this all the time, so I've sat down and I've put together a list for you guys, 10 top ways to get sharp images. Let's get into it after the intro, and if you like this video, be sure to hit the like button and smash the subscribe button. I will appreciate it. Alright guys, so the first point is to clean your lens. Yeah, simply clean your lens. Trust me, I know it sounds very simple, but clean your lens. If your lens is clean, you get clean images, you get pictures that are not soft. Make sure you don't touch your lens when you're shooting. Now if I touch it here, it makes a mark there, it leaves a mark there, it leaves fingerprints on it, and it can sometimes make your images soft, and you lose that sharpness that you want. So clean your lens. Yeah, get a lens cleaning kit or something, or just get a microfiber cloth, clean the rear and front of your lens, and you should get, well, you're one step there. Let's move on to the second point. Now the second point is camera and lens choices. So the kind of camera you're using is going to, obviously affect directly the kind of sharpness you get in your images. For instance, I now have a Canon EOS R. The first camera I bought was a Canon T3i. Now when I compare the images from the two cameras, definitely you're going to see massive improvement. You're going to see better sharpness with the Canon EOS R as compared to the T3i. Still on that, this is a Sigma 85 1.4 art lens. This is a Canon 50mm f1.8, the Nifty 50. If I compare these two lenses and I take pictures, let's put the focal length aside, you're not going to get the same sharpness with these two lenses. You get my point? When you compare the Canon L series lenses to other non-L series lenses, you realize the sharpness is not the same. So camera and lens choices, guys. The camera you're using is going to depict how sharp the image you take will be. But then again, the best camera is the one you have. So whatever camera you have in your hand, use it. Don't say because you're not going to get sharp images out of it. It's going to be sharp enough. If you're watching this video, there's a possibility that you have a camera which takes good pictures. You might not deem it good enough, but it will still take good pictures. So point there, camera and lens choices affect sharpness of images. So choose your camera and lenses wisely. Now point 3 is what shutter speed you're shooting with. Now are you shooting with a very high shutter speed, or are you shooting with a very low shutter speed? When you're shooting with high shutter speed, you're able to capture the motion. Yeah, so if you're taking a picture of somebody and then the person moves the head or something like that, if your shutter speed is high, you're still able to capture it and capture it sharply. Whereas if you're using a very low shutter speed, if your subject moves, you kind of get a bit of blur in there. Another tip with shutter speeds is to keep your camera still. When you're taking pictures, after achieving focus, try and keep your camera still. Yeah. Now, when I say keep it still, somebody might ask, what about when you're trying to recompose your shot? Now, if you're trying to recompose your shot, recompose it on the same plane. Now, for instance, if my camera is here, yeah, and I achieve focus and I move the camera forward, it's going to lose focus unless maybe you're using a AI servo or something like that. But if you're using the single shot mode, which most of us use, me myself, I like using the single shot, because then if I achieve focus, I know I've achieved focus, and if I move the camera a little bit, it's not going to change that. So try and keep the camera still. If you want to recompose your shot, make sure you're recomposing on the same plane. Make sure you don't go forward or back. You can take it up, down, left or right, but do not take it front and forward or back. Do you get my point? Yeah. If your camera has image stabilization, you might want to turn it on, because if you turn on your IS, obviously it's going to make things more stable, hence result in a sharper image. Do you get my point? So if you're shooting with, say, a shutter speed of less than 1/100 and you've got image stabilization and you take a picture, and you've got another camera shooting the same shutter speed with no image stabilization, if you're not very still, yeah, you're gonna get slightly blurry image. So keep that in mind as well. Now the fourth point is aperture, or f-stop as some people call it. Now we all know when you take pictures and the f number is very low, you get blurry backgrounds, whereas if the f-stop is very high, you get less blurrier backgrounds, which is very true, but you need to be strategic. You don't always need a very blurry background. Be creative with your shots. If you're using a very shallow aperture, you're gonna get a very shallow depth of field, and sometimes that can only mean having only this part of the face sharp and everywhere else very soft, especially if you're very close to your subject. So consider that as well. You shouldn't use a very low aperture all the time. I know a friend of mine who has his camera set at f1.4 all the time. He never moves the aperture, unless, obviously for artistic reasons, that's how you want to keep it. Aperture does affect your pictures directly, so you might want to use a slightly higher aperture, about 2.0 or 2.5 or 2.8 when you're shooting portraits and all that. That can go a long way to help get sharp images. Now, if you're taking group pictures or something like that, you might want to use a higher aperture. Now, if you're using a lower aperture, you can just have your subjects on the same plane, or should I say on the same line. You might still get all of their faces in focus, but why not try and then step it up a little bit? It's better to get a sharp image without a very blurry background than to get a blurry picture with a very blurry background. You get my point? So next time you go on a shoot, try your best to not shoot at a very low aperture, if not very necessary. Try something new. Now the fifth point is focus. So where do you put your focus? As most people say, put it on the closest eye. If your subject is standing like this, you might want to put it on the closest eye, which is not this one, it is this one. Do you get my point? Put your focus where you want it. Be creative, be artistic, however you want to call it. If you want to put the focus on the forehead, put it on the forehead. But at the end of the day, you should keep it in mind that you're going to have the forehead sharp, because that's your focus. So focus well, focus on the most important parts of your image. And there you have it. Now, still on focus, another point to consider is the various focus modes we have. Now, I'm a Canon shooter mostly, and on Canon we have the single shot and the AI servo, which is usually for shooting moving subjects and for shooting sports and all that. For portraits, I always recommend shoot with single shot. So when you achieve your focus, it is locked and it is there. Do you get my point? So long as you don't move your camera front or back, your focus is there. This comes as a plus if your camera has eye autofocus, eye AF. Now this camera right here has eye AF, and that's why I bought this camera, to be honest. I used the Canon 6D Mark II, which I was very pleased with, but it didn't have eye AF, so I had to recompose my shots all the time. So the only reason I got the USR was to get the eye AF. Do you get my point? That face detect and all that. When I'm taking pictures, it makes things easier. When I go to weddings and I'm shooting, I can focus on recomposing my shots well, instead of focusing and recomposing. Do you get my point? So if I'm shooting at weddings, I'm just so focused on composing my shots well. The camera does all the thinking. The camera finds the eyes, locks focus for me, and it gets the job done. So if you have a camera with eye AF turned off, please turn it back on, because it helps a lot. Trust me, it helps a lot. Now the last thing I want to talk about with the focus, I've already spoken about it, but I'll mention it again under focus as well, and it is recomposing your shots. When you're recomposing your shots, if you need to, try not to move forward or backwards. Try to keep the camera where you locked your focus. So keep it there, lock focus. You can move it this way, that way, this way, and that way. You cannot move it forward or backwards, because you're gonna get blurry images. Keep that in your mind. Now the next point is your ISO. Now I know that sounds a bit controversial, because how does ISO affect how sharp your image will be? Trust me, it does affect how sharp your image will be. Not directly, but it does. Say you take pictures and your ISO is very high. You come back and you have a lot of noise in your images, and then you have to, try and then tune things down and all that in post-production. You're going to lose some detail in there. You're going to lose some detail along with the noise you're trying to clean. Do you get my point? So try your best to select an appropriate ISO. If you need to light your scene well, try and light your scene well. If you've got speed lights, use it. If you've got strobes, use it. If it's too dark, get some external light source. Don't always crank your ISO up and crank it up. Do you get my point? So know your camera, know your camera's capabilities, and know how best you can work with ISO, as it can affect how sharp your images will be in the end. Our next point is camera profiles. Every camera has camera profiles. Now we've got on Canon we have the standard, the portrait, the landscape, the monochrome or something like that. They've got a lot of profiles on there. When you go to the profiles and you try to edit the profiles, you can edit the profiles as well. When you try editing the profiles, you're going to see that there is a sharpness slider there. Yeah, you can move it all the way to the right to add more sharpness to your image, or you can slide it all the way to the left to remove sharpness from your images. Now, mind you, even though this feature is available, you might not want to go straight ahead and crank the sharpness all the way up, because it can sometimes make your images feel a bit artificial. I mean, well, pictures are artificial, but it can sometimes make your images feel more plasticky, as some people call it. Go try it. Crank the sharpness all the way up, take a picture, crank it down, keep it somewhere in the middle, and take a picture, compare the two, see what you like, and then stick with it. So your camera profiles have an effect on how sharp your images will be as well. Now, my next point is about using a tripod. Yeah, and I know most people do not like to hear this. I myself, I honestly do not like to hear this, because I like to just get up, get my camera, and go out, shoot. I don't like carrying tripods around. Maybe it's because I've got a very massive tripod, so I don't really fancy carrying it around all the time. But use a tripod when you do need to. For landscape photographers out there, use a tripod. I mean, I believe every landscape photographer has a tripod anyway, unless you don't, which you should buy if you don't. I mean, your landscape photographer, you should have a tripod. And we shouldn't leave tripods to only landscape photographers and wildlife photographers. Do you get my point? Portrait photographers sometimes get a tripod if you need it, because it helps you to get sharp images. It keeps your camera steady, keeps your camera, and all that. So get a tripod, invest in a good tripod. Maybe not a heavy tripod, maybe not one as heavy as mine, but get something, get a tripod. Now, the next point I want to add is to shoot in burst mode. Yeah, if you need it, it is there. It is a feature that you should use when you need it. If you're shooting people that are moving, say when you're shooting graduations, that moment when you're shooting graduations and people are like, oh, I want to jump, I want to throw the hats and all that. You can shoot in burst mode, take a lot of pictures at the same time, then go through it, find the sharp ones, delete the rubbish ones. If you're shooting moving subjects, like if you're shooting moving cars, or if you're shooting moving animals, or you're shooting moving people walking, people running, anything with movement in it, you can also try shooting in burst mode. And yeah, you're gonna get a lot of images. Look through and select the sharp ones, delete the blurry ones. Now, the last point I want to discuss is to sharpen your images in post. When editing your pictures in whichever editing software you have, Photoshop, Lightroom, Capture One, wherever, try and sharpen your images there when you're done with everything. I myself, I use on-sharp mask. There are a lot of ways to do this. Obviously, I use on-sharp mask, and it works for me, so I keep using it. As I said, there are a lot of ways to do it, so find a way to sharpen your images in post, and sharpen your images if you need to. If you don't need it, that's fine, but if you do need to sharpen your images, make sure you do it. Add some sharpness in post. Remember, subtlety is key, so don't overdo it. I know this is a feature you have on your computer, and then if you want to sharpen your images, you can sharpen it as much as you like, but try to not overdo it. Try and keep it, as subtle as possible. And that's it, guys. That's 10 ways to sharpen your images and to get better images. So get out there, get creative, implement some of these into your daily shoots, and hopefully you should get better results. Let me know if you have any questions in the comment section below. Let's keep this interactive. If you have any other ways to get sharp images, I'd like to know in the comment section below. Check out my Instagram at IamSerenjo. Check out my website at www.serenjophotography.com. Be sure to give this video a like and smash the subscribe button if you're not already subscribed. Remember, I am Serenjo, and this is your Photo Chef. See you in the next video. Peace.